What would you do if you could relive your life, knowing exactly how someone you loved most would destroy you? Picture two twin brothers, George and Makoto, trapped in a deadly game of survival, manipulation, and revenge. In a world where family means nothing more than a weapon to be wielded, one brother will discover that sacrifice isn't always noble. Sometimes, it's just another form of betrayal. Imagine dying because of your own brother's greed, crushed at a construction site, betrayed by the very person you once protected. Then, impossibly, you wake up. Not in the afterlife, but back in time, right at the moment that changed everything. This isn't just a story about getting a second chance. This is a brutal tale of a brother who learns that kindness is weakness, and survival demands a price higher than blood. Watch as George transforms from a naive, sacrificial brother to a calculated strategist who will stop at nothing to reclaim his stolen future. Every tear, every plea, every moment of vulnerability becomes a weapon. Family secrets will shatter. Manipulations will be exposed. And the brother who once thought he could destroy George will discover a terrifying truth. Revenge is a game best played cold. Are you ready to witness a story where love turns to poison and family becomes the ultimate battlefield? Hit that subscribe button. Share this incredible journey. Because some stories aren't just about survival. They're about proving that the most dangerous person is the one you never saw coming. Life had been cruel to us even before our father's death. After he passed away, Mom remarried, and our new stepfather presented us with an impossible choice. She could take only one child with her. My younger brother, Makoto, looked at me with desperate eyes, pleading to be the one to leave the village. "Brother," he said, his voice trembling, "you're smart and strong. You're perfect for surviving here as a farmer. Without Mom's care, I'll surely die." His words were both a plea and a manipulation. In that moment, love for my brother and a sense of sacrifice overwhelmed me. I made the heart-wrenching decision to drop out of school and remain in our rural village while Makoto went to the city with our mother. What I didn't realize then was the path of destruction my brother would soon embark upon. After arriving in the city, Makoto became obsessed with a female live streamer named Willow. He began spending his entire tuition money sending her gifts, convinced that this was true love. His delusion ran so deep that he believed she would one day marry him and continue our family line. Enraged by Makoto's behavior, our stepfather stopped sending him money. Undeterred, my brother made a shocking decision. He secretly returned to our village and sold the old house our father had left behind, our family's only remaining inheritance. When I heard about this, I was working at a construction site, carrying heavy bricks. The rage and betrayal were so intense that I suffered a heart attack and fell from a high platform. I died that day, crushed by the weight of my brother's selfishness. But even my death became a transaction for Makoto, who used the compensation money to send more gifts to his online idol, Willow. Then, impossibly, I found myself back in time, precisely on the day Makoto begged me to stay in the village. This time, something had changed within me. Instead of compassion, I felt a burning anger. I kicked him away and walked directly to our stepfather, resolute in my decision. A worthless fool like Makoto didn't deserve to be anyone's #1 fan, let alone destroy our family's legacy for a fleeting online fantasy. As I relived those moments, I realized I had been given a second chance. My heart raced with the knowledge of my rebirth. In my previous life, Makoto had manipulated me with his pitiful pleas, leaving me behind while he pursued a life of perceived luxury with our mother. We were twins, with just 10 minutes separating our births. But in that previous life, those 10 minutes had made all the difference. I had been naive, believing I was protecting him by sacrificing my own future. Now, I understood the true nature of his character. Initially, our mother had sent me maintenance money, but gradually, the financial support shifted to Makoto. My monthly allowance plummeted from $500 to a meager $500 every 3 to 5 months, a clear indication of his selfish nature. This time, things would be different. This time, I would take control of my destiny. Makoto's explanation about our stepfather's financial situation seemed like a carefully crafted lie. He claimed their family could barely support me, reducing my monthly allowance to a pittance that couldn't even cover basic tuition and living expenses. The only consolation was an old house left to me, a modest roof over my head in a world that seemed increasingly harsh. From a young age, I was forced to work, but the constant malnutrition took its toll. My body was weak, my health fragile. Dreams of education slowly crumbled, and I couldn't even attend the college entrance exam. Dropping out wasn't a choice. It was a cruel necessity forced upon me by circumstances beyond my control. Later, the truth emerged like a knife to my heart. Our stepfather's family wasn't struggling at all. Makoto had been living a life of absolute luxury. Expensive games, lavish mansions, sleek cars, everything I could never even imagine possessing. Yet, he remained ungrateful, consumed by a dangerous obsession. His entire world revolved around a female live streamer named Willow. He spent every penny, maxing out credit cards to shower her with gifts. Our stepfather tried multiple times to reason with him, but Makoto was deaf to advice. When the stepfather finally canceled his credit cards, Makoto's desperation reached a new low. He set his greedy eyes on the only asset I had, the house left to me. In my previous life, discovering Makoto had sold my house was the final blow. Working at a construction site, I lost my balance and fell, my life ending in a moment of tragic betrayal. Brain matter spilling out, I died knowing my own brother had stripped me of everything. But this time would be different. When the moment of choice arrived, I looked at Makoto coldly. "We're both Mom's children," I said carefully. "Let her decide." My mother appeared conflicted, her eyes moving between us. Makoto, ever the manipulator, quickly changed his approach. He linked arms with our mother, his voice dripping with manufactured vulnerability. "Mom," he said sweetly, "you know brother has always been smart. He'll manage fine alone. But me? My health is poor. I depend on you completely. You can't leave me here." In my previous life, Mom didn't hesitate. She knew my history, how I'd always helped with housework, how I'd taken care of Makoto while she worked. She understood his true nature. Marrying into a wealthy family was her chance at a better life, and bringing along someone perceived as useless might compromise her new social standing. If I hadn't insisted on staying behind, claiming I could manage, Makoto would never have gotten his golden opportunity. Perhaps sensing the inevitable, Makoto swiftly shifted his charm offensive to our stepfather. "Dad," he said, squeezing the man's hand, "I'm very filial." The performance was perfect. But this time, I was ready. Unlike me, Makoto had always been a master of manipulation. Where I was quiet and reserved, he was a skilled performer, arguing with Mom and causing her constant worry. Now, he was painting himself as the perfect son, promising to be well-behaved if taken back. His ability to lie and smear my reputation was breathtaking and terrifying. The way he called our stepfather Dad with such practiced intimacy was almost nauseating. Our stepfather, relatively new to our family, didn't truly know us. Mom had kept our existence a secret until after their marriage, revealing her twin sons only after they had wed. Understandably angry, the stepfather chose a Solomon-like solution. He would take only one child. It felt like a punishment for Mom's earlier deception. People had always preferred Makoto. His smooth-talking charm won over elders effortlessly. What he didn't realize was that I was more than capable of playing the same games. I had survived hell itself, learning every survival trick imaginable. I simply chose not to use them, until now. Seeing a flicker of softening in the stepfather's expression, I seized my moment. Mimicking Makoto's manipulative tone, I stepped forward. "Dad," I said, carefully crafting my words, "I've always been the one studying hard, enduring hardships. I've helped Mom with work, while Makoto has been protected. It's time for him to learn independence." Makoto's reaction was instantaneous. His eyes blazed with a poisonous fury, teeth gnashing. Instantly, he transformed into a picture of wounded innocence. "Brother," he wailed, "why are you trying to take everything from me? Haven't I given you enough since we were kids? Now I just want a home, a father, and you're destroying that?" Our back-and-forth exchange clearly raised suspicions in the stepfather's mind. Something felt off about our dynamic. I was determined not to fall into Makoto's carefully laid emotional trap. Instead, I turned to my mother, the ultimate arbiter of our fate. I realized that if Makoto could cry on command, so could I. In our past, no matter how difficult life became, or how deeply I was wronged, I had never shed a tear. This stoicism had only made me bear more unfairness, seemingly pushing my mother closer to Makoto. The brutal truth was simple. Family, blood relations, these were just fancy words people used to defend their own interests. My mother was no exception. She would likely have chosen Makoto without hesitation, if not for concerns about how the stepfather might perceive her. I had an advantage now, and I was going to use it. Makoto would never expect the typically non-competitive older brother, who had never fought for anything, to suddenly become his fiercest competitor. The game had changed, and this time, I was going to win. With carefully crafted vulnerability, I looked up at my mother, my eyes brimming with tears. "Mom," I said softly, "I'm not afraid to endure hardships with you. I just want to stay by your side forever." I knew exactly how to play this moment. "You know my grades have always been top-notch. If I leave you, I'll probably drop out. Makoto is different. He never liked studying." I doubled down on my performance. "Don't worry," I continued, my voice a mixture of determination and tenderness. "I'll study hard. After I graduate, I'll make money and take care of him." What Makoto didn't know was that I was now aware of a crucial detail he had hidden from me in our previous life. Our stepfather wasn't poor at all, a fact Makoto had deliberately concealed. He had gone around spreading lies, telling me the stepfather was struggling financially, all to manipulate my perception. In my previous life, I was naive. I didn't care about fighting for anything, believing hardship was universal. When Makoto expressed his desire to follow Mom, I had simply stepped aside. Now I understood his true motivation. He didn't want to be with Mom. He wanted to become a privileged, rich second-generation kid. The stepfather looked surprised, about to speak, but Makoto intercepted. "Brother," he said dramatically, "what nonsense are you talking about wanting to live a hard life? Dad is so successful. Are you cursing him to go bankrupt? Your heart is truly wicked." Turning to the stepfather with exaggerated flattery, he added, "Dad, please don't be mad at my brother. He's always been a big talker. I've gotten used to it over the years." But Makoto had made a critical mistake. His performance was becoming transparent. I smiled faintly. "But you said we lived a hard life with Mom," I reminded him. "I'm willing to endure hardship." The trap was set. Makoto realized he had fallen right into it. He fell silent momentarily, then frantically changed his narrative. "No, I just heard that Dad's life is good," he stammered. I knew Makoto well. Once his lies were exposed, he became incoherent. Now, everything he said sounded like desperate excuses. The stepfather's expression darkened. "Are you really willing to endure hardship with us?" he asked. Tears still glistening, I nodded. "Mom has worked hard for us her entire life," I said. "I just want to stay with her and make her suffer less." My mother's relieved smile and the stepfather's approving nod told me I had won this round. Makoto glared at me with pure malice, but I lowered my gaze. concealing the calculated darkness brewing in my eyes. The game had just begun. The decision was final. The stepfather would take me with him, leaving the old house to Makoto. Sensing his impending loss, Makoto was determined to make my departure difficult. Just as we were about to enter the car, he grabbed my hand dramatically, raising his voice intentionally for our mother and stepfather to hear. "Brother, I'm really happy for you," he proclaimed, his tone dripping with false sincerity. "I just hope you don't cheat in the city. It would ruin Dad's reputation." Makoto knew precisely what he was doing. He understood that the stepfather's fondness for me stemmed primarily from my academic achievements. This calculated comment was designed to plant seeds of doubt and potentially destroy my newfound opportunity. In my past life, I would have panicked, desperately trying to defend myself and falling right into his trap. Now, I simply smiled calmly. Makoto was far too naive to understand the long game. Even if the stepfather momentarily believed Makoto's insinuations, doubt would inevitably creep into his heart. Time, I knew, would reveal the truth. Frustrated by my lack of reaction, Makoto leaned in close, whispering a threat only I could hear. "I'm telling you," he hissed, "enjoy your good life with Mom now. If you don't send me money, I'll destroy your happiness. If I can't have it, you won't either." I responded by loudly patting Makoto's shoulder. "Little brother," I said, ensuring everyone could hear, "how can you suggest I deceive Dad for money? We're still young. We should focus on studying. Don't worry, I'll work while studying and make money for you." A sudden silence descended. All eyes turned to Makoto, who turned bright red. He pointed at me, speechless and unable to formulate a coherent response. Seizing the moment, I grabbed his finger and spoke with exaggerated brotherly affection. "Brother, you have to study hard. We'll work hard together. Even though I left with Mom, you're still my brother. No matter how bad my life gets, I won't let you suffer. You've been spoiled by Mom and me since you were little." Was Makoto trying to ruin my reputation? Then why shouldn't I fight back using his own tactics? The stepfather looked at Makoto with visible disappointment, released a deep sigh, and drove away. In the car, an unexpected conversation arose. "How about I give Makoto 10,000 yuan a month for living expenses?" the stepfather suddenly proposed. My mother didn't protest. Instead, she turned to me with a surprising question. "George, what do you think?" The game continued, and I was ready. In my previous life, the living allowance for Makoto had been a mere 500 yuan per month. I had repeatedly complained to my mother, believing her financial struggles were the reason. Now, I understood the deeper truth. Back then, when the stepfather first proposed the allowance, my mother had first consulted Makoto. Remembering this, my gaze turned cold. Throughout our lives, I had never claimed to treat Makoto like royalty. But whenever someone else had something, I would fight tooth and nail to secure it for him, often sacrificing my own needs. Yet, I never anticipated the depth of Makoto's hatred towards me. Forcing a calculated smile, I responded to the 10,000 yuan proposal. 10,000 yuan is too much, I said carefully. Makoto is still a child. Without family around to guide him, he might develop bad habits that could ruin his future. Besides, he's in the village where expenses are low, and Grandma can look after him. 500 yuan a month should be sufficient. My mother looked at me in disbelief, seeing the brother who had always loved Makoto unconditionally. The stepfather cast an appreciative glance, clearly impressed by my apparent selflessness. Seizing the moment, I added, "Mom and Dad have already struggled enough. I'll become a burden, so I'll work hard to make money for Makoto." My mother finally sighed with relief. After my persistent assurances, they agreed to the 500 yuan monthly allowance. Stepping into the stepfather's house, the spacious villa left me momentarily stunned. In my previous life, I had only discovered their wealth after dropping out of school and starting work, information Makoto had repeatedly and cruelly flaunted in my face. controlling my emotions became crucial. In front of the stepfather, I couldn't appear too shocked or overly impressed. I remembered how in the past, the stepfather had canceled Makoto's credit card due to his reckless spending and vanity, something the stepfather deeply disliked. The game was intricate, and I was playing for much higher stakes than Makoto could comprehend. I understood that no matter how much the stepfather loved my mother, he could never fully accept a perceived burden. My mission was clear: prove my worth and express genuine gratitude. Noticing the stepfather watching me, I deliberately let a few carefully timed tears fall. "What's wrong?" he asked, surprised. Wiping my eyes, I responded with calculated vulnerability. "I thought you and Mom were living such a hard life. This is too good. I can't bear seeing you both working so hard just to make ends meet." The stepfather's satisfied smile confirmed my success. "George, you're truly understanding," he said, patting my head. When someone guided me to my bedroom, I trembled, not from fear, but from the overwhelming reality of luxury surrounding me. After 2 lifetimes, I had never possessed my own room. In my previous life, the old house I inherited was crowded. My grandmother lived there, my uncle's family occupied the spaces, and I was relegated to sleeping in a storage room. I recalled how different I was from Makoto. When he eventually set his sights on selling the old house, he ruthlessly evicted my uncle's family without hesitation. Back then, I believed suffering was my destiny. I'd always preferred enduring hardships so others could live more comfortably. But why, after countless sacrifices, did those who contributed nothing continue to thrive while I struggled? Not this time. I was done with construction site hardships and endless self-sacrifice. That evening, Makoto's furious call confirmed my expectations. "George Ito," he screamed, "why are you so vicious? You're blocking my path to becoming a rich kid. You deserve to die." I had anticipated his response. He demanded to know how the 10,000 yuan monthly allowance had transformed into 500 yuan. Before I could answer, he launched into a frenzied monologue. To my surprise, my mother had revealed our conversation to Makoto, revealing that even now, he remained her favorite child. In my previous life, such a revelation would have crushed me. I remembered those difficult days when, forced to drop out of school and work on construction sites, my only dream was to afford an electric bike for commuting. But this time, I was prepared. This time, the game would be played by my rules. In my previous life, when I desperately needed money, I had mustered the courage to call my mother and request a loan. Her response was cold and dismissive. "Didn't your stepfather leave you a house? You shouldn't be so greedy." Even after my death, she had gone to extreme lengths to protect Makoto, helping him escape public condemnation by testifying that I had taken my own life. I should have recognized long ago how fundamentally selfish both my mother and Makoto truly were. Reborn, I no longer harbored any expectations from her. Her revelation to Makoto was merely a calculated move to avoid future blame, a game she played masterfully. I responded to Makoto's furious call with calculated calm. "First, my surname is Wong now. You can call me George Wong or Young Master Wong," I stated firmly. "Secondly, yes, I did this. If you don't want me to live well, why should I let you? Focus on yourself. In a few days, you won't even be able to keep the house." I hung up, knowing Makoto hadn't been reborn like me. If he had, I would have spared no effort in describing the torments of our previous life. Since that wasn't possible, I'd let him slowly realize his fate, like a frog in boiling water. My mother wouldn't dare secretly support Makoto financially. Living in the stepfather's house, everything we used was provided by him. She was too shrewd to risk humiliation by helping her ex-husband's son. My goal was simple: gain the stepfather's favor. Family, blood ties, these meant nothing to me now. I wanted only one thing: money. The stepfather transferred me to the best high school, despite it being my third and final year. My previous school's teaching quality had been poor, resulting in less than ideal midterm exam scores. Returning home nervously, I was surprised to find Makoto already there. "Hey, bro," he said with an air of unearned pride. "I came to see you. I heard your midterm results came out, and I'm here to report my scores to Mom as well." Something felt off about Makoto's gaze. Unlike his previous life, where his eyes revealed both scheming and a certain naive foolishness, this look was different. Both my mother and stepfather were present, with the stepfather showing particular interest in my results. "Bring out your report card," he requested. The stage was set. Another act in our complex family drama was about to unfold. Before I could react, Makoto swiftly snatched my bag, dumping its contents onto the floor. He found my report card and handed it to the stepfather. The moment the stepfather saw my declining scores, his face darkened visibly. Makoto's triumphant expression was unmistakable. "See, bro," he said, barely concealing his glee. "I told you to study seriously. You insisted on cheating, but now that you're at this strict school, you couldn't. Look how you've embarrassed Mom and Dad. Unlike me, I'm in the top 10. He proudly presented his report card to the stepfather as if it were a precious artifact. The stepfather's expression was complex, a mix of disappointment and uncertainty as he glanced between us. Something didn't add up. Makoto had always been among the worst students, consistently second to last or last in his class. His sudden rise to the top 10 seemed suspicious. Before I could voice my doubts, Makoto preempted me. "Mom, Dad," he said, adopting a tone of sincere dedication. "I know you think my brother is better than me, but I've been working hard. Don't worry, I'll get a great rank in the college entrance exam, and maybe then return to be with you." His true purpose became crystal clear. My mother's eyes lit up with hope. She embraced Makoto, her affection palpable. "You really are a good son," she proclaimed, then turned to the stepfather with a calculated plea. "They're twins," she argued. "You wanted the most outstanding child to help you in the future. How about this? Let's wait until their college entrance exam results and then decide who to keep. For now, let Makoto stay at home." As the stepfather wavered, Makoto turned on the waterworks. "Dad," he whimpered, "you don't know. My uncle and aunt have taken over my room. I don't even have a space to study at night. I won't disappoint you." A provocative glance in my direction completed his performance. The stepfather ultimately agreed to my mother's suggestion. That night, Makoto entered my bedroom, surveying it with a sense of false nostalgia. "Ah, I miss this place," he said. "It used to be mine. But George," he added with a hint of menace, "don't think you're the only one who's been reborn." I responded with a faint, knowing smile. From the moment Makoto appeared at the stepfather's house, I had suspected he too had returned from our previous life. The game had just become far more interesting. Makoto's newfound courage suggested he too had returned from our previous life. He approached me slowly, his voice dripping with malice. "My dear brother," he said, "only a fool wouldn't use the situation with uncle and aunt to his advantage. You let them bully you. My goal was never that broken house. I'm here to take back what belongs to me." He challenged me, seemingly enjoying the opportunity to boast. "Do you think your 2 lifetimes of memories will help you drive me away, fool?" After his dramatic speech, Makoto left, believing he'd unsettled me, but my expression gradually transformed from shock to a knowing smirk. Everything was precisely as I had planned. I had known about Makoto's rebirth from a specific incident. He had apparently fallen from the 2nd floor of his school and upon waking, deliriously mumbled about sending gifts to Willow and being a rich 2nd generation. That moment confirmed he had returned with memories intact. I had deliberately failed my exams to make Makoto believe I was struggling in the new environment. In our previous life, I had dropped out before even taking the college entrance exam. Makoto, overconfident with his returned memories, forgot one crucial detail. I hadn't dropped out because I couldn't learn, but because I lacked money for school. My goal was simple: keep Makoto close. How could I execute my revenge if he wasn't within my sight? Since his return, we'd been traveling to and from school together daily. Although Makoto pretended to study hard, keeping his desk lamp on late at night, I knew better. He was either watching women's live streams or reading comics. Ironically, this behavior only endeared him more to the stepfather. I maintained my routine: early to bed, early to rise, knowing the knowledge from my previous life was already deeply embedded in my mind. One weekend, Makoto orchestrated his next move. Bursting from his room with theatrical tears, he rushed to hug our mother, fixing an emotional gaze on the stepfather. "Dad, Mom," he choked out, "my room is so small. I saw mice, and it's so damp. Could you please let me have another room?" His intention was transparent. He wanted to switch rooms with me. Though the stepfather lived in a mansion, only the master bedroom and my room were spacious and sunny. The other rooms were merely guest rooms, perfect for Makoto's manipulative plan. The game continued, and I was ready for his next move. The stepfather glanced at me hesitantly. My mother, without a moment's pause, turned to me. "George," she said dismissively, "you know your brother's health hasn't been good. He needs sunlight. Besides, he's been studying so hard lately. It doesn't matter where you sleep, so just let him have the room." Makoto's smug smile told me everything. I had long since abandoned any hope of my mother's fairness. Her tone revealed her expectation that I would always yield to Makoto. Surprisingly, I didn't protest. In fact, this was an opportunity to expose Makoto's fabricated efforts. I nodded obediently. My mother didn't even thank me. She had already planned this entire scenario. They were working together to push me out of the family's favor. If the stepfather hadn't initially been impressed by me and maintained a neutral stance towards Makoto, I would have been replaced already. I understood I had only one chance. A businessman's patience isn't infinite. Casually, I led my parents into Makoto's room. Opening his desk drawer, I discovered a hidden compartment filled with comic books. Not just any comics, but rare editions worth thousands. These were treasures practically impossible to acquire without spending a small fortune. As I gasped dramatically, Makoto panicked, rushing to stop me. Perhaps too confident in his recent manipulations, he momentarily forgot about his hidden treasures. "Wow, brother," I said, feigning admiration. "You have so many comic books. I'm so envious. All I have are test papers and exercise books, yet you find time to read comics. Did you spend all your pocket money on these? Oh my gosh, some are rare editions." My performance was perfect. My mother and stepfather stood nearby, witnessing everything. The comic books showed clear signs of extensive reading. The volume of comics consumed in just 2 months was evidence enough that Makoto hadn't been studying. Moreover, the stepfather had recently increased Makoto's allowance significantly. Though wealthy, he wasn't foolish. But I wasn't done. I noticed Makoto's phone charging nearby. Despite being on silent, the screen displayed a live streamer in a provocative pose. Willow, undoubtedly. Casually, I picked up the phone and shook it lightly in front of the stepfather, my expression a masterpiece of manufactured shock. The trap was set. Makoto's carefully constructed facade was about to crumble. "Brother," I said with exaggerated concern, "you can't be watching this borderline content. You're so young, and these vulgar live streams will negatively affect your growth and health." As I spoke, I clicked on the leaderboard. Makoto's name blazed brightly at number 5, a position that must have cost him at least 50 to 60,000 yuan in gifts. Though my stepfather was older, his internet-based company meant he was well-versed in online trends. There was no way he wouldn't understand Makoto's live stream spending habits. I knew Makoto would eventually expose his true nature once he let his guard down. My strategy was simple: make him feel secure. let him believe everything was proceeding according to his plan. Only then would he reveal his authentic self. Makoto panicked, snatching the phone from my hands and glaring with pure malice. "Dad," he stammered, "you're mistaken. This isn't mine. I was just helping my brother out. The gifts were from him." His performance was laughably unconvincing. Unexpectedly, my mother slapped me across the face. "How could you let your brother do this for you and then frame him?" she screeched. "Where would he even get the money?" She seemed to have conveniently forgotten that when Makoto lived in our hometown, she hadn't dared give him extra money for fear of angering the stepfather. Since moving here, she had withheld my allowance, giving everything to Makoto. Covering my stinging cheek, I looked wounded. "Mom, I didn't do anything. I don't even have pocket money. How could I afford gifts?" The stepfather's suspicion grew. He demanded to see my mother's phone transaction records. She hesitated, guilt written across her face, but eventually surrendered the device. As he scrolled through the history, the truth became evident. The money he transferred to my mother had been almost entirely allocated to Makoto, with only a few hundred yuan occasionally given to me. I couldn't help but smile faintly, waiting for the performance to reach its climax. The stepfather threw the phone back to my mother, a cold sneer crossing his face. The trap was sprung. Makoto's carefully constructed facade was crumbling exactly as I had planned. Those words pierced right through me. "You're George's real mother, yet you're so biased toward your son." In that moment, something inside me shattered. 2 sons, 1 mother, but why the unequal treatment? Was it because I always stepped back? Because I never fought for my share of attention? Because Makoto's tears seemed more powerful than my silent suffering? I didn't have answers, but I understood something profound in that instant. The stepfather, a man not bound by blood, was standing up for me. He had no obligation to choose fairness, yet he did. His defense spoke volumes about his character. Tears began rolling down my cheeks before I even realized I was crying. Mom remained silent, her guilt hanging heavy in the room. The stepfather's voice was calm but firm. "I see no reason to switch rooms. George will receive his share of pocket money directly from me." Watching his retreating back, my vision blurred with emotion. Though older and childless, he treated my mother with genuine respect. I suddenly understood something about his past I hadn't recognized before. He had experienced a painful family dispute with his own brother over inheritance, which had torn them apart forever. This history had shaped his approach to our family dynamics. He wasn't keeping distance. He was trying to prevent the toxic rivalry that had destroyed his own family relationship. In my previous life, I couldn't comprehend this. Now, I realized his actions were born from deep personal wounds and a desire to prevent history from repeating. Makoto and my mother glared at me with pure anger. Makoto's rage exploded. "Is this what you wanted, George? Let me be clear. I won't back down. You need to leave." I remained silent. Engaging with such bitterness would only drain my energy. On the morning of the college entrance exam, the stepfather took a day off to personally accompany both Makoto and me. Mom fussed over Makoto, meticulously packing his bag with hot buns and eggs. Her treatment of me was starkly different. She casually tossed a single bread roll in my direction, without a word of encouragement. The stepfather, noticing my quiet disappointment, had the maid pack his own carefully prepared breakfast into my bag. This gesture felt like a long-lost embrace of fatherly love. Though not my biological father, he showed more care than my real father ever had. Just before leaving, I noticed a suspicious exchange of glances between my mother and Makoto. Their silent communication made me uneasy. When I retrieved my exam registration card, my suspicions were confirmed. It had been mysteriously switched. In that moment, I realized my mother's true intention. She wanted me gone. While I could comprehend her desire to protect and favor Makoto, I couldn't accept her willingness to destroy my future for his sake. Her message arrived with a chilling threat. Write Makoto's name on the exam paper. I'm your mother. I have the right to decide everything for you. Fortunately, I had long ago seen through my mother's manipulative nature. In my previous life, I had endured unimaginable pain while she never once fought for me. The moment Makoto played the victim, she would instantly surrender, sacrificing my needs without a second thought. Determined to expose the truth, I immediately sent a screenshot of her threatening message to my stepfather. Though he had already left in the car, upon receiving my message, he instantly turned around and returned. He arrived just as we were about to enter the exam hall, his timing impeccable. The stepfather grabbed Makoto's arm, demanding he return my exam registration card. Moments earlier, Makoto had been smugly whispering in my ear, "George, you think you can surpass me? Not a chance. I have countless ways to make you leave this house." Now, faced with the stepfather's anger, Makoto was completely terrified. Attempting to avoid further confrontation, Makoto put on a facade of remorse. "I'm sorry, Dad," he said, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "I was careless and mistook the name on the exam card." The stepfather remained unmoved. "The person you should be apologizing to is your brother," he responded coldly, his words cutting through Makoto's performance. Turning to me, the stepfather offered words of comfort. "Focus on your exam. Don't stress." I wasn't certain how much genuine affection he truly felt for me, but in this world, genuine feelings seemed less important than actions. What mattered was my determination to become valuable, to prove myself worthy of staying by his side. I nodded, accepting his advice. The bell rang, signaling the start of the exam, and the stepfather left. Makoto shot me a look of pure hatred, his eyes filled with unspoken malice. During the weeks of waiting for exam results, the atmosphere at home was tense. My mother and Makoto alternated between glaring at me and hurling cold, cutting remarks, as if my very existence was an unforgivable offense. When the results finally arrived, Makoto boasted of scoring over 500 points. My own score remained mysteriously hidden. Emboldened by his perceived victory, Makoto proudly approached the stepfather, a smirk playing on his lips. "Brother," he said with a hint of mockery, "could it be that your score got cancelled because you cheated?" "What's with you always taking shortcuts?" my mother lashed out at the stepfather, her words dripping with accusation. "I'm sorry, dear. It's my fault for not properly teaching George. I've embarrassed you. I'll make him move out now. Makoto scored over 500 points. With some extra effort, he can retake the exam and get into Capital University." I remained silent, watching this mother-son performance unfold. My stepfather observed me intently, seemingly studying my reaction to this unexpected pressure. My calm demeanor appeared to intrigue him. "Only high scores would be hidden," he said with a cold laugh. "You two really don't understand, do you?" Mom and Makoto exchanged looks of disbelief. "Impossible!" they exclaimed in unison. "George always failed before. How could he have a high score?" The stepfather's sneer cut through their assumptions. "Can't you see George is strategically controlling his scores? Every subject is precisely above the passing line, not 1 point more, not 1 point less. Meanwhile, my dear son," he said, looking directly at Makoto, "you're copying others. Do you really think I'm blind?" I couldn't help but admire the stepfather's remarkable perception. He saw through everything with crystal clarity. Makoto, consumed by guilt and anxiety, avoided his mother's gaze. No matter how much she pressed him, he remained silent. The truth emerged only when the phone call from Capital University arrived, revealing that I had been accepted to choose between 2 top universities in the capital. My mother collapsed to the floor, the revelation shattering her carefully constructed narrative. The stepfather rose slowly, standing beside her. His words were deliberate and final. "Let's get a divorce. If we ever have children, I'm afraid you'll only blindly favor one of them." Shock transformed my mother's features. She desperately clutched the stepfather's pant leg, pleading, "It won't happen. I swear I won't prioritize Makoto anymore. Please don't divorce me. George is the top scorer. He's my son too, and he's brought you honor. If you divorce me, George won't be by your side to honor you. Wouldn't you have raised him for nothing?" The stepfather's eyes remained cold, his voice unwavering. "I will continue to support George." My mother crumbled, all her strength evaporating. Makoto, driven to madness, attempted to argue with the stepfather. Immediately the bodyguards escorted them both out. Turning to me with a meaningful gaze, the stepfather asked, "Do you think I'm being heartless?" I watched them lose control, my own eyes growing increasingly cold and distant. I responded without hesitation. If a person is too greedy, they don't deserve to have everything. My stepfather seemed satisfied with my answer, his subtle smile revealing his approval. When I went to register at the university, my mother's call interrupted the process. Her request was desperate and calculated. She needed money, claiming that Makoto had depleted her entire savings by recklessly tipping a streamer named Willow. The revelation didn't surprise me. In fact, it felt like a form of poetic justice unfolding before my eyes. My response was calm and detached, carrying the weight of years of emotional manipulation. "You're no longer my mother," I said coldly. "Didn't Dad leave you a house? People shouldn't be so greedy." Each word was measured, precise, a final severance of the toxic relationship that had defined my previous existence. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very greed that had driven her to favor Makoto was now consuming her own future. My tone carried no anger, no bitterness, just a clear, decisive judgment. I had learned that true strength wasn't about revenge, but about moving forward with dignity and self-respect. As the echoes of my mother's desperate plea fade, I realized this isn't just a story of revenge. It's a story of survival. 2 lifetimes, countless sacrifices, one brutal truth. Family is just a word, and love can be the most dangerous weapon of all. Makoto thought he could manipulate me. My mother believed she could discard me. But they never understood the most important lesson. A person pushed to the edge doesn't break. They transform. I'm no longer the passive brother who accepts suffering. I'm the architect of my own destiny. Every calculated move, every strategic decision, they were building towards this moment of liberation. To Makoto, who tried to sell my inheritance. To my mother, who chose favorites without hesitation. This is my declaration. I am not your victim anymore. The university acceptance letter isn't just a piece of paper. It's proof. Proof that intelligence trumps manipulation. Proof that survival isn't about who cries the loudest, but who thinks the coldest. My stepfather saw something in me that no one else did. Potential beyond blood. He gave me more than a second chance. He gave me a future. As I stand at the beginning of my new life, I understand now that true revenge isn't about destroying others. It's about building yourself, rising so high that those who tried to break you can only watch in silence. Some stories end with forgiveness. Mine ends with transformation. This is my story, my rebirth, and it's only just beginning.